Well, I want to put this out to just kind of an informal, nonchalant way, just to counter some of the misinformation that's out on YouTube, because I know there's a lot of, um, I don't want to say, well, let's say, I think people are, in their hearts, they are coming to these conclusions not out of just malice, but they're getting not all the information. So, um, I know, like, the Bolshevik Revolution was largely financed by, major Jewish bankers and all that. But let's look at some other things that happened in Russia before the Bolshevik Revolution. The anti-Jewish pogroms in Russia. It was a term that came about during the time in the 1800s, which meant a large-scale, targeted, and repeated anti-Jewish rioting, and much more than rioting was rapes and murders, and pillaging of all their goods and possessions in their homes. Um, it happened during the Russian Empire, and part of it is, um, I just think it's, well, you know what happens, and this is one of the reasons I think a lot of Jewish people are in the media, because the media at the time in Russia was, part of the reason why it came about. Um, if you say one thing, it's like, well, let me give an example of media disinformation that led to wrong conclusions. Look at the marijuana stamp tax act that occurred because of a media blitz that said that um, Mexicans were using the marijuana hemp drug to, put young white women under the influence so they can rape them. And who was really behind that was like DuPont and you know, uh, their Rockefeller and Randolph Hearst with his newspapers, with the paper mills, paper pulp that he had invested in the trees and stuff, so he didn't want the competition from coming from hemp. Well, it's like everything could be. I know. I mean, sometimes there's propaganda in a lot of different ways, but just to kind of balance things out here a little bit, a lot of this was, why Zionism came about, and the anti-Jewish pogroms in the Russian Empire, and also, how why a lot of Jews supported the Bolshevik Revolution, because, it's a change. Let's change the situation, because look what was going on during the whole time in the 1800s. They're looking for something that can remedy the situations. Here you have a picture on the right. This is right from Wikipedia, and as people say, I don't like Wikipedia, but no matter what source I take, Wikipedia is about the most tame source there is. So you can't say I'm picking it off of you know some propaganda site or something, whatever. Maybe you'll say Wikipedia is propaganda. I don't know. But here's a photo believed to be its victims of mostly Jewish children in the 1905 uh, pogrom that happened in Russia. So Odessa, 1821, and also 1881, 1884. The term pogrom became commonly used in English after a large-scale wave of anti-Jewish riots swept through southern and western Imperial Russia, present-day Ukraine and Poland. There was still, even when the Nazis invaded Poland and Ukraine, there was a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment in that area. So from 1881 to 1884, at that time, over 200 anti-Jewish events occurred in the Russian Empire, notably in Kiev, Warsaw, and Odessa. Right. Um, so the trigger for these pogroms was the assassination of the Tsar Alexander II, for which they blamed the Jews on. Now the thing is, you see, this is where the media blitz comes in. The truth is, one one of the close associates of the assassins, was born into a Jewish home. An associate of an associate of one of the assassins was born into a Jewish home. So the fact that the other assassins were all atheists, didn't matter. So if you found one, you got, well, it's a Jewish conspiracy. The Jews killed the Tsar Alexander II, right? I mean, that's really how things happen a lot of times in the media. I mean, and there's propaganda all different kinds of ways. I mean, so You got to counter it. And so here you have at least 40 Jews were killed during pogroms during April to December 1881. Of these, 17 were reportedly killed while being raped. An additional 225 incidents of Jewish women were being raped were also reported. This was going on in Russia all through the 1800s and into the early 1900s. And this is why there was a large Jewish support for the Bolshevik Revolution, not only by the ones that are, had a lot of wealth, but also, even other people thought it was idealistically a change for the better. That's what it was assumed to be because of what was happening for, all this years before that. And that's really, and so like on YouTube, you'll say, oh, the Jews are behind communism. Well, come on. It's not that simple. It's definitely not that simple. But you could see why, if you could pull out a fact, you say, well, there was a lot of Jews that were involved in the Bolshevik Revolution. But why? It's like, oh, they're trying to take over on us. No, it's because of what was happening to them. They wanted to change from the czars. The czars were persecuting them. Or the Russian people were persecuting them. A lot of Russian people, partly due to the information that was coming out in the media that was bad information, and also, whenever you're a close knit group and you decide to stick with your own traditions and you don't want to go along with anybody else's traditions because it's like you're doing your own thing, people start to freaking suspect you. That's really what it is. If I decide, I want to paint my house purple and, I don't know, paint my driveway orange or something, I don't know, and put statues of kangaroos on the lawn. Okay, I'm just giving a crazy example. Say you want to just be different, right? And people can look at, well, something's with that guy, something's up with, hey, that's kind of that's how they're viewing Jews because they're doing things a little bit different from what's in the rest of the major community, and that's because they want to do their own thing. I'm really a big advocate of doing your own thing as long as you don't hurt nobody else. Who the hell cares, right? Nobody could do their own thing today. What do you think this is? What's going on, right? So from 1903 to 19, and I'm sorry I'm being flippant on this because I know this is really serious business here, but you can only take so much. It's overload when you freaking talk about. This is serious business, and I'm going to say a few more things though. 1903 to 1906, a much bloodier wave of pogroms broke out, right, from 1903 to 1906, as I said, leaving an estimated 2,000 Jews dead and many more wounded, as the Jews took to arms to defend themselves, their families, and properties from attackers. Very important phrase there, took to arms. Old Roman phrase, maxim si vis, pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war, which is the informal motto of Israel in some ways, which is fine by me. And actually, to be quite bluntly honest, I know people on YouTube would say Zionist. Well, I guess I would be a Zionist. I'm all for that. What the hell's wrong with the establishment of Israel? Nothing. People should support Israel. If you're Jewish, I think it's part of your being, to support Israel. I think Israel is fine. Nothing wrong with it. And I think they need to get a lot bigger and need to have more buffer zones. And I want to talk a little more about that and on another idea that's going to go even beyond that. The 1905 pogrom against Jews in Odessa was the most serious program of the period, which reports up to 2,500 Jews killed. Now, like I said, this is why a lot of the Bolshevik Revolution was supported by Jews, because it was a change from what was going on against them. Ideologically, it looked like everybody was going to be equal, everything's going to be fine. It didn't turn out that way, obviously, right? Because absolute power corrupts and whatever, right? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as Lord Acton would say. So the communist controllers, well, I know somebody's going to say, well, whatever. I already know what the deal is. I've researched the hell out of this stuff, probably far more than my people in my audience. But the anti-Jewish riots are worse than the censor will permit to publish, they're saying. So they're that bad. They're extremely bad. There were well laid out plans for the general massacre of the Jews on the day following the Orthodox Easter. The mob was led by priests. So, see what I'm saying? So the mob was led by priests. The general cried, "Chill, kill the Jews." Was taken up all over the city. The Jews were taken wholly unaware and were slaughtered like sheep. I had to really double emphasize that Jews were taken wholly unaware and were slaughtered like sheep. One of my things I keep thinking about in the USA, and I'm not Jewish, but it's like, I'm leaning that way pretty heavy, but in some ways. But I could tell you, like, I think a lot of people that are Jewish in the United States are pretty unsuspecting of what's going on in the major cities in the United States. And, a lot of people up in the Northeast are Jewish in New York metropolitan area and in Long Island and all that. And, not, maybe not the U.S. people will do something, but that's target number one of if we ever get in major conflict with another country. Not a good place to be, to tell you the truth. Now, I'm going to actually propose something else here because, uh, there, in the western United States, there's a lot of freaking open land. I know people in the United States would get all bent out of shape if there was going to be established, a backup little Israel in the United States, and they get all bent out of shape about that. Why should we do that? Well, I think it's not a bad idea. I would do it, if I could do it. I can't do it, but if I had the power to do it, I would. Because, when you even look at, you look at YouTube, like what happened with the Bundy Ranch. They wanted that land because there was uranium deals with Russia, and the Chinese wanted that land, and our government was selling us out down the river to the Chinese, right? The Chinese communists, not the Chinese people, right? And the Russians are being sold uranium from our lands in the United States, right? No upcry. And actually, these federal lands are controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. Nobody's really allowed to do anything with them. And the Bureau of Land Management is like a bunch of damn Nazis in the first place. But nobody gets up in arms about that. But if I proposed, hey, we're going to have a backup little Israel in the West, just in case you get all bent out of shape. But that's what I'm proposing. And if you get bent out of shape about that, you better be getting bent out of shape about the Bureau of Land Management and also the fact that we're selling uranium to the Russians and all these other minerals and stuff to the Chinese communists, and they're not allowing Americans to use a lot of these lands. So you're not missing them anyway. That's one way I'm looking at it. But if I said back up little Israel, they get all bent out of shape. But anyway, Israel is fairly well defended, obviously, but it's such a small country. That's one thing that's a problem. Actually, Jacob Schiff, the big multi-millionaire, the turn of the century, he was actually against the establishment of Israel because he figured it would be a target for Jews. In other words, better off having Jewish people live in different countries so they can't really be a singled out target. Israel could be like a focal point target. The way it is becoming that way. That's why it's well defended. But actually, I don't think a lot of their things they're doing in their military are the smartest things in the world. I'm not too much on putting a lot of women in the military, like these are IDF hot-looking soldiers and stuff. But they'd be better off breeding more Jewish people to learn the great Jewish way. Versus, it's good learning some arms, but it's not really, when it comes right down to it, women in combat are not really the smart way to go. I can tell you that right now. But there's a lot of other stuff they could do. Because being mommies, they can make more Jews. They could do that. But anyway, just want to also say this. Another thing that you see on YouTube a lot, I think it's like they say the Star of David has nothing to do with the Jewish people. It's occultism, whatever. I don't know. It depends on how you take things. The Star of David, is the shield of David. It's really, if you're looking at it in the right way, and it depends on, you can interpret stuff a lot of different ways. Like I put videos out on the Confederate flag, and people say, "Oh, it's racist." Well, it's not racist, you yo-yos. But I'm going uphill on that battle. I can tell you that right now too. But the Star of David or the Shield of David, actually probably more aptly named would be the Shield of David. It's the shield of God that it's a shield that David used, which was the shield of God against all kinds of adversity that the Jewish people will always survive. That's what it's a symbol of. There's more to it than that. But if simply put, you could just say it's the shield of David, and the shield is God itself, God Himself. Okay. So anyway, just want to kind of lay that to rest because it is now commonly known as a symbol of Judaism or the Jewish people. So I know some people say bad things, but whatever the hell it is. But if you look at Israel, Israel's pretty small, right? It's got a lot of power. It's got a lot of military strength. I know a lot of it's coming from the United States, which is good. But you look at Israel and its size, and you look at what it's surrounded by. I mean, to me, this is not the best strategic position in the world. You know what I mean? I know what biblically it's supposed to be. Returning Jews to the homeland and all that. And I actually I wish Julian didn't get killed. Julian the Apostate, the Roman Emperor, didn't get killed in 363 A.D. because he was working very hard to push back the Parthians and Persians, but he died in battle. He was in such a rush to rally his troops, he forgot he didn't have time to put on his armor, and he received a mortal wound that took him 2 or 3 days for him to die. But he was actually ordered to Rome to rebuild the temple, the second temple, and it turned out that project got abandoned after he died. But if he had lived, the world would have been a very different place. But the Christians call him Julian the Apostate, but I call him Julian the Hero. It's in my book, so I don't know where the hell that makes me. I don't know. But, I looked at Israel and I say to myself, this is not really the best strategic position to be in. Definitely need those Golan Heights, that's for sure. But, look at the United States again from this perspective. This is a map that's put out by the U.S. government, U.S. General Services Administration, right? Federal real property, right? Now, like in Nevada, you got 84.5% of the property is federal. Utah, you got 57.4%. People can't really use these lands anyway. Why not establish a backup little Israel in there? Considering how little Israel is, it could probably be as big as Israel, for as I'm concerned, or maybe two of them. You got one in Nevada, one in Utah, and of course, if you're in Utah, you could be fighting Mitt Romney and the Mormons because Mitt Romney's a yo-yo. Anyway, but that's my proposal on it. Actually, does that makes me a double Zionist, doesn't it? Because I'm all for Israel. And I'm actually for supporting having a backup Israel. But what the hell? What the hell? I mean, nobody gets up in arms in the United States. Nobody gets pissed off the fact that the government is mismanaging these lands. The American native peoples that lived in these lands before us, the white guys, got over here and killed them with all our biological diseases that we're carrying over from Europe, like bubonic plague and yellow fever and smallpox. Well, the American Indians were actually managing these lands pretty damn good. They were practicing conservationism, and now with the Bureau of Land Management, you got them like screwing up the lands left and right. You know what I mean? If a wildfire gets out of hand, they don't try to put it out, and they don't like burn down certain brush to keep things under control, so there isn't too much wildfire, and it manages the way the trees grow and things. The American Indians were doing, American Native Peoples, or American Native Peoples Indians, whatever you want to call them, were doing that. But nobody cares that all this land is owned by the federal government. You can't do this, you can't do that, And the resources are being sold to like Russia and China. Great, really nobody cares, right? Nobody cares, right? And then if I propose, and nobody else is doing this, just me. I said this before in another video, and actually a couple other videos, but I'm putting it more specific. There should be established a backup Israel or a couple backup Israels in the American West. Actually, these areas would be far safer than probably anywhere in the world than if we went into a major nuclear conflagration or something, without a doubt. Because I don't know. That's my thought on that deal. which you could say that's Zionism, right? Whatever. Who cares? I mean, really, come on. But, actually, I think the biggest protector of the Jewish people is God Himself. And that's really what this symbol, the shield of David, means. Okay. Um, but beyond that, I have to go along with the old Roman expression, maxim si vis pacem para bellum, because, ideologically, you could say God will protect the Jews, but when it really comes down to it, you got to have the weapons too. You know, God will protect you by making your aim much better and your senses much better, and making you give you the strength to use your weapons in the correct manner to wipe out your enemies. But um, you know, I just have to kind of like re-emphasize that phrase down here in the bottom. Jews were taken wholly unaware and were slaughtered like sheep. You don't want to be in that situation. Period. None. It's not like you got to be in a constant, there's an enemy under my bed all the time, but you got to have that little back in your head awareness of things that could possibly happen. That is why a lot of this stuff with the prepper stuff and survivalist stuff is pretty good stuff to know, but you don't need to be too far into it, obviously. And if I actually want to recommend a rifle weapon, I know there's better out there, but the most common thing out there is the good old AR-15. And I know that Israel's got some new bullpup design. It's a hell of a lot better than that. And there's other stuff out there, but it gets too expensive, too exotic, too difficult to find parts, more complex, or whatever the hell it is. And you want to go with the tried, true, and proven common stuff. Just like with a knife, K-bar is probably your best all-around knife, although there's some pretty good $10 ones out there too, even. But you gotta be into these type of things because you don't want to be caught unaware of what's going to happen around you. And I know a lot of the media's there's Jews in the media. They're not all Jews in the media. I know that for a fact. Um, because there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the media too, and sometimes in the media, I don't think the Jews are actually doing themselves too much good the way to present some stuff. Maybe I don't know because it doesn't seem to be working a lot of times. I can tell you that right now. But and that's one reason why there's in the media because it's like once people get this grain of something, they hear a word taken out of 10 paragraphs and they take that word and they make it into a sentence and they make it into a paragraph, just like the accusations about the Jews behind the assassination of the Tsar Alexander II. There was one associate of a guy of one of the associate of one of the assassins that was born into a Jewish house, and all of a sudden it became a Jewish conspiracy. Like, holy shit, man. So, but I, and like I said, it's like whenever you do your own thing, it's like people suspect you. I mean, it could be that it used to be that way even with. Let me give you an example. I mean, Harley Davidson riders. I mean, at one time, now it's like, maybe last 15 years or so, oh, it's became so cool that play Harley Davidson, with the motorcycle. But back in the 60s, if you were a little bit out of tune with the rest of the normal population, if you want to call them that, I don't know if it's normal or just the other common population, um, you were just looked at as an outcast. And if you had long hair in the 60s, you were looked at as an outcast, right? What the hell's wrong with long? I mean, I don't have long hair, but you know what I mean, right? I mean, if you do anything different, so Jews stick with their own traditions. They want their own traditions, right? That's partly where a lot of this stuff comes from, where they start getting this anti-Semitism from, because they stick with their own traditions. So that means you're not blending in, and that's really why a lot of times Jews feel a little safer. I'm going to speak for them when I'm this way in a multicultural environment because it doesn't look like they're standing out as much because there's a lot of different cultures. We're just one of the different cultures, see? So it blends in a little bit better. right? Well, I don't care if we're, you know, I'm, well, I don't know what the hell I am. I'm not really. Well, I'm all for do your own thing, man. I don't really give a damn like what you want to do. Fine, you know, that's really what it is. And by and large, if you look through history, Jews have done a lot of good, especially in the field of medicine, which is something I'm big time into. And if you look in Israel today, they're big. They're big into doing a lot of research on the medicinal benefits of marijuana. Well before it became popular in the United States, and you're probably unaware of that. So, but I mean, I don't think Jews walk on water. You know, like hey, everybody Jewish is perfect. Now, I don't think that. You know, but by and large, as a whole, they're a step above people. I think just by them obeying their laws and being with God, because God is their number one protector. But God is your number one protector, especially if you got an AR-15 that's locked and loaded and you know how to use it. I'll just leave you with that because